Hello.
Hi.
Hi, how are you tonight?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. If everyone decides to, stay calm in the background for me, then I'll be doing really well. It's
Yeah.
hit or miss sometimes.
Yeah. All of mine are sleeping. Well, the older two are upstairs, but the younger two are sleeping, so we should be good
Nice.
on my
It's
side.
usually the 3-year-old. She bangs down the door and she's like, "Let me in." And I'm like, "What
Yeah.
do you want in here?" And she comes in. She's like, "Hi." I'm like, "Okay, that could have waited like 5 more minutes." um,
Yeah.
I'm so excited that you decided to jump on with me because I feel like the more women that I talk to, the more experiences I get to hear about, and the more opportunity that someone out there will be, touched or maybe be helped by something that somebody says. And so I really think it's important for everyone to share their journey that they have. Um, I really try to leave the floor open so that you can talk and I don't interrupt unless something just shocking comes up. I don't usually try to interrupt, but yeah. With that, I just want you to introduce yourself and then just uh, tell us your story.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. My name's Vivian. I
I know we
not good
forget
at
who we
introducing
are. I
myself.
know we forget who we are and what we do, and
Yeah. I'm Vivian. I'm a birth photographer in Chattanooga. Yeah, I just wanted to tell I'm going to tell the story of my most recent birth, which was also a free birth, my only free birth that I've ever had. Um,
that's so cool. So, a free birth would be one that you didn't have anyone present, like medical side, right?
yes,
Okay.
correct.
I believe you'll be my first free birth on the podcast. I
Awesome.
do have one of my really close friends. She has a free birth story, and I haven't been able to get her on yet. So thank you for opening up the way for that.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Um, well, yeah, I'm happy to do that. Okay. Sorry. I thought one of my children was waking up. Okay.
It's okay.
Uh Anyway, okay. Well, so yeah, I'm not sure where to start, I
Just
guess.
start in the beginning. You just tell me, the beginning. We'll just start there.
Okay. Well, oh gosh. Uh well, okay. I'll start by saying I didn't initially plan on having a free birth. Like, we had just moved to Chattanooga, and so I was not familiar with the midwives here or like how it is trying to get a midwife here. But since we've moved here, I've learned that you pretty much have to have a midwife as soon as you're like thinking about getting pregnant here because they all book up so quickly.
That's true. That's fun. They're already like booking for next March.
Yeah, so like I definitely didn't know that, and I um like unexpectedly, well, like the time that I got pregnant was unexpected. Um So, like, I didn't have any kind of like midwife in mind or lined up or anything. So, I found out I was pregnant, and then I started looking for a midwife I talked to one and I really liked them. And then I talked to another one who we ended up like, my husband went with me to that interview for that midwife, and we ended up saying we were going to have her as our midwife. So I started going to appointments with her and stuff, and the vibe was just off. Like, we did not really mesh at all, which was weird because during our interview, I thought we would. But once I started going to appointments, I was just like, okay, like, we just didn't have the same outlook on like what I wanted that pregnancy to be, I think.
Yeah, and that's important too, to let that in your birth space. I agree. I understand.
Right. So this baby, he's my youngest, and he was my fourth baby. So like going into it, I was very much like just very relaxed and calm, and like I've done this 3 times already. All of my kids have already been born at home. So like I'm very familiar with like how that goes, and I've
Right.
never had like an issue in my pregnancies or anything like that. So, and I told her that from the beginning too. But I felt like once I went in and started going to appointments, she kind of like had a more medical mindset than previous midwives I've had. And like, that wasn't what I was really wanting.
Right.
So yeah, we just ended up not really meshing well, and I just kind of like stopped going to my appointments for a while and tried to find another midwife, but they were all already booked up. Every single one I called were already booked up for my due date.
Wow, that's so crazy.
Yeah. So at that point, I was like, well, I guess we're gonna have a free birth.
Surprise.
um, Yeah, and well, like, I had brought it up to my husband before I made that decision. I brought it up to him and I was like, this is the other option, basically, because all the other midwives I've called are booked up. And it was like, I called like every midwife I knew of at the time. So,
Right. So you kind of feel like, what are you going to do next, kind of thing?
yeah, so like it was kind of, we went back and forth for a while on like, are we really going to like do that? Because that was like new territory for us because I've always had a midwife. Um, but we kind of just like talked about it, and I am Christian, so like I prayed about it, and I just we came to the conclusion that that was what we were going to do. That's what felt right for us. Um, so yeah, so then I ended up having to have the really awkward conversation of like telling that midwife that we
Right.
weren't gonna continue with her, and I didn't really say that I was gonna have a free birth. I was just kind of like, we're going in a different direction. Uh-oh. Oh no, one of my kids really is waking up.
No, no, you're totally fine.
Okay, I got him.
I have a million kids, so I understand.
I know, I have a million too. It's crazy.
It's
Okay,
like after 3, you just quit counting.
I know. It's just like now I have a million.
Mhm.
um, yeah. So anyway, so we decided we were gonna have a free birth, and then I just, picked up. Oh my goodness. I just started kind of like just doing my own monitoring and things like that at
Mhm.
home. Like I had
Mhm.
a Doppler, and so I would use that to like check his heart rate and things like that. But other than that, we really didn't do much as far as like we didn't get any ultrasounds this pregnancy or anything like that.
Right.
Um but yeah, I mean, the whole pregnancy went really well. I didn't have any concerning, like anything concerning happen.
That's
um,
good.
yeah, like it was pretty smooth. Um, I did do a course, a Freebirth course, like an online course.
Mhm.
That, because the one thing that I was like, I didn't really have prior knowledge about of like how to handle yourself was like if, you know, some kind of emergency situation were to
Right.
happen during labor. Because I had never really thought about that because I had always had a midwife. So, I did buy a course and it talked about like different types of emergency situations and like what to do in them. And that did help me feel a little more prepared, like on, you know, that side of things. Um, but yeah, I mean, other than that, my pregnancy went like just really smoothly. And I want to say I was like pretty, I think I was like almost halfway or maybe halfway when we decided to have a free birth, like
Mhm.
around 20 weeks ish. Um, so yeah, the rest of my pregnancy was just really easy and smooth. And he was born in July, and it's crazy because my third baby's birthday is in July and my birthday is in July.
Oh wow, birthday month.
Mhm. So like his due date was the very beginning of August, but the whole time I was like, "Oh, I bet he's going to be born in July because that's
Mhm.
like when we're all born apparently."
Right.
Um and so I kept like it was like we celebrated my third child's birthday. She had turned 2. She just turned 2, and then I was like waiting and I was like, okay, when is he going to be born? Is he going to be born on my birthday or around my birthday? And I like really wanted him to be born on my birthday. Um, and I just kept like thinking that for some reason, like
Mhm.
he's going to be born on my birthday.
Mhm.
So I was getting really impatient. That's like a thing that happens with me towards the end of my pregnancies is I just get really impatient and I'm like, okay, he can be born now, like or
Right.
and at that time, I didn't know he was a boy, obviously, because we hadn't had any ultrasounds or anything. But all of the rest of my kids are girls, so I was definitely like wondering if he was going to be a boy, but I wasn't getting my hopes up. So I just kept saying, like, the baby is hopefully going to be born on my birthday.
Mhm.
But yeah, so then my birthday like came and went and he wasn't born and I was like really sad.
You're like, "What is this?
I know.
How dare you?"
I was like, what? No, he was supposed to be born on my birthday. But I did have like random I don't know if it was prodromal labor, but there were a couple times where I did feel like maybe something was happening, like I was
Mhm.
starting to have contractions or something, and then they just stopped. Um And that did happen, like, on my birthday, and I was like, "Oh, is it really gonna happen?" But then it didn't happen.
Oh, and you get so
I
excited.
know. I was like, "Oh, no way, like, it's really gonna happen on my birthday," but no. So, anyway, so my birthday is the 22nd of July, and he wasn't born on my birthday, so then at that point, I was just, like, kind of sad, and I was like, "Okay, well, whatever. Maybe I'll go all the way to my due date with this one, who knows?"
Mhm.
Like and then so that was the point where I kind of started to, like I think, like, surrender a little bit more and just be like, "I don't care anymore." Like, obviously, he'll be born whenever, um, like, is the right time, you know?
Right.
So then I did focus there were some things that, like, I hadn't gotten done So I did make sure to get everything done. Like, I made like a postpartum cart to have by my bed, and I was like cleaning and, like doing all of those things.
Right.
And I finally like finished all that stuff probably on like a couple days before. It was probably like July 25th or something.
Oh, okay.
And then I had some time to just like chill, and like I was relaxing a lot more and not like doing, like preparing things or doing as much. I was working. So I have like 9 to 5
Yeah.
that I work from home, and I was working still, and I was like frantically like finishing up work projects and stuff because I knew I was about to be like taking time off. And on July 27th was when I started feeling like really weird. Like,
Yeah.
well, July 26th, I would say, I started feeling really weird and like felt like the baby was just sitting like really, like all of a sudden the baby just felt like extremely heavy. Like,
You're like, I've reached my limit.
yeah, I was just like, it was just like a lot. I don't know. So I was just like really trying to rest, and uh on the 27th, I definitely felt like there was like a lot of like pressure, and I was like uncomfortable, but nothing was like happening. It was just like, this baby feels really heavy and like I'm super pregnant.
Yeah.
And then throughout the day that day, I kind of was just, my husband was like home from work, and we were just kind of like hanging out as a family. But I also was like at that point in pregnancy where I was like, this baby's never gonna be born, and like I don't even care anymore. Like, I'm just gonna be pregnant forever, whatever.
I think
Like,
like all women get to that point where they're like, I'll be the first pregnant woman to ever never have the baby. Just it'll be grown.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like that's how it feels for some reason at the end. That's like, it's so weird how that happens, how you get that feeling like it's just never gonna happen.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so like I was just kind of enjoying myself that day actually. Like, I was just like, whatever, I'm gonna be pregnant forever, so who cares? And we just like hung out at home all day, and like was just, I personally was just really like lazy that day, and just like had a good time hanging out with the kids and my husband. And I didn't like we were just hanging out all day, and I didn't get up to like go to bed until around like 9:30 or 10 p.m., and I started feeling like tired, like I wanted to like go get in my bed. And I remember like that was when I started feeling really different. Like, I like sunk into my bed, and it was like one of those moments where you like lay in your bed and you're like, "Oh my gosh, my bed feels so like it feels so good to just lay in bed right now."
Right.
And like I could just, I don't know. I was just feeling different, and but I still didn't want to say like, "Oh, I think something's gonna happen tonight. Oh, I think," because I didn't want to get my hopes up or anything. So I just kind of like laid down, and I like, my bed was like super comfy and I was like laying in bed for a while. Like, I didn't even go to sleep right away. And around 11:30, I felt like something. Like, it wasn't like a real contraction, but it was some sort of like twinge that I was like, okay, that kind of felt like maybe something will really happen tonight.
Mhm.
Um, and I was like, well, maybe I should go to sleep actually because it's 11:30. And if something is gonna happen tonight, I should probably sleep for at least a little bit. So, at that point, I, like, went to sleep. And then so that was at 11:30 when I decided to go to sleep, and then at 12:20, I woke up to use the restroom, and immediately, like, when I entered the bathroom, I, like, felt like an actual real contraction, and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Here it is.
Yeah, and, like, my labors are always usually, like, decently fast, like,
Mhm.
the shortest I've had it was before this birth was, like, 4 hours, and the longest was 6 hours, which is still pretty short. Um, so I expected things to move, like, pretty quickly, so, like, as soon as I felt that first, like, real contraction that I knew, like, right away it was the real deal, I was like, "Okay, yeah, this is, like, happening, like, this is gonna happen right now."
Right? Especially
And
with your
s
fourth, you know the things by that time, you know?
Right, it's like you can tell, especially at that point, like, you can tell, like, "Okay, this is real, like, this is" like, you can just tell that it's actually happening. So I, like, went and just laid back down in bed and tried to, like, still rest a little bit because I had only really gotten, like, maybe an hour of sleep, but probably not even an hour of sleep. And I laid back down, but I couldn't go back to sleep, and then I just, like, kept having these, like, mild contractions, but, like, they were definitely, you could tell, like, it was real labor, but
Right.
they were not super painful or like, they were just mild, but they were only, like, a few minutes apart. And so I just, like, kept having those, like, a few minutes apart, and I texted, I so throughout my pregnancy, I met this friend actually who had also had a free birth, and we, like, sort of talked off and on throughout my pregnancy, and she, at the time, was also, like, just getting into birth photography. So I ended up, you know, at some point throughout my pregnancy, I ended up inviting her since she had had a free birth and she was getting into birth photography. I ended up asking her if she just wanted to photograph my birth.
Oh, awesome.
Because I figured, like, if I was going to have anyone there that wasn't, like, family, I would want it to be somebody who had was familiar with free birth and, was going to be okay in that situation. So when I realized that my mild contractions were only a few minutes apart, I texted her and I was like, I'm in labor, but I also didn't want to wake her up because they were still just mild, even though they were, like, pretty close together. So I didn't want to wake her up at that point because I didn't know exactly how long it was going to be. So I just texted her and I was like, I'm in labor. And she didn't wake up from that text. And I also didn't wake up my husband right away because I wanted to let him sleep a little more. But at only, like, 12:45 or 12:50, I ended up waking up my husband and calling my friend to, like, actually wake her up because, like, in just that, like, 20 to 30 minutes, they were, like, drastically different.
Wow.
Like, they turned from, like, just mild, like, whatever to, yeah, I have to, like, breathe through these and, like, concentrate quite a bit, and like I could just tell that things were picking up like really quickly. So, I woke up my husband, and he like immediately was like, "Oh, okay, we're doing this," and like started getting everything ready. We had like all our birth supplies and everything already like in the bathroom and ready to go. So he kind of just started like getting things out and getting them organized. And I like did not want to get up from my bed. So I just kind of like laid there while he did that. And then a few minutes later, I did end up getting up to try to walk into the restroom. And it was like hard to not like hard to walk, but like hard to like want to move. Like I just wanted to
Mhm.
stay in the same spot because the contractions were getting like more and more intense. Um and like, it was just crazy because I was like, I don't understand why these contractions are like already this crazy. Like I was like, it hasn't even been that long. Like what is happening? So I just kind of like stood in my bathroom
Mhm.
and like leaned against the counter and breathed through these like intense contractions that were happening, and then all of a sudden I like almost felt like I wanted to like push,
Mhm.
and I was like, what is happening? And then my water also broke at that point, like as I was just like standing up in my bathroom. uh and so at that point, since like my water just broke, I'm having these like really intense contractions. Uh,
Wow.
I was like freaking out a little bit because I
Right,
had
because you're like, that was
never,
too intense so quickly.
right, like I had never had a birth that was this fast. This was really fast. So like I also, it's interesting because I didn't know how I would handle having to be like so present to be able to like monitor things in
Right.
labor, that to make sure that everything was okay, you know? Um, I didn't know while I was pregnant, like, how I would handle that, but then, like, once I was in labor, it was really interesting because I did remember to, I checked to make sure my water was, like, clear and there was no
Mhm.
meconium or anything, and it was, and everything looked fine, um, and so my husband had put, like, Chuck's pads all over the bathroom floor, because I don't know, I guess he was trying to make cleanup as easy as possible, but it
Nice.
was, like, really funny, so I ended up just sitting down on, like, the Chuck's pads that were on the bathroom floor, and really my body just started, like, pushing, because I really didn't do anything at that point. I was just kind of trying to, like, wrap my mind around how
Right.
fast everything was moving. Um, so then I got up again. So I sat down for like a second, and then I got up again because like I felt like I had to like pee, but I knew like I was in labor, so I was like, this can't be actually what I'm feeling, right? But like I went to sit on the toilet, and then um I like checked to see if the baby was actually coming. Like I kind of like felt, and I could feel the baby's head. And
You're like, "Oh, okay."
I was like, okay, yeah, so this is what that is what that is. So I was and I was like sitting on the toilet, and I like knew I did not want to give birth on the toilet, even though I know like so many people who have home births do give birth on the toilet, but I did not want to. So I like quickly got up and went out of like the toilet area of the bathroom and went into my shower.
Mhm.
Um, I went into my shower, and I didn't even have a chance to like turn the shower on. Uh, because I pushed, I think, like, 2 more times. Um, and I was just like, I didn't have time to turn the shower on or anything. I just, like, sat on the floor kind of
Yeah.
in the shower, and my husband had to leave the room for it was probably, like, 2 seconds because our older daughter had woken up, the 2-year-old at the time, had woken up, and my mom was staying with us, so he kind of, like, took her out of the room to take her to my mom, and then he came back in, and when he walked back in, another, like, in super intense, like, crazy push happened, and the baby pretty much, like, half of his body or something, like, came out with that
Oh,
push.
wow.
Like, it was insane. It was really just fast. Like, it was just really fast. Um, but as that was happening, I also, like, felt down and I could feel the cord.
Mhm.
And so that kind of freaked me out because that was, like, the first thing that I felt when I was, like, feeling to see what was happening with the baby because I couldn't really, like, see very well.
Right.
And my husband did say, like, he, like, grabbed the baby and he had to unwrap the cord. It was wrapped around him at least once. I'm not sure if it was wrapped, like, quite I don't think it was wrapped that much, but I think he did have to unwrap it for sure. But yeah, that kind of freaked me out because immediately when I, like, felt the cord, the first thought in my head was cord prolapse
Mhm.
because that was the first thing I felt, but the baby was already pretty much out, so it wasn't really that.
That was your mom brain, making
Yeah,
sure you checked all the boxes, like.
right, like, I was like, "Oh god, why do I feel the cord?" But yeah, it kind of just everything just came out at the same time was really what happened. But yeah, so by the time, my husband, like, grabbed the baby, unwrapped the cord, um, he was just, like, crying immediately, and I was just kind of, like, sitting there, like, my husband handed the baby to me, he was crying, and I was just sitting there, like, completely in shock.
Yeah.
Because when he was born, the time of his birth was 1:50 AM. So, from my first contraction at my first real contraction was at, like, 12:45, and then he was born at 1:50.
That is crazy. That's not even long enough to, like, register it, in your brain, like, "Oh, I'm in
Right.
labor."
Right, like, it was insanely fast. So I afterwards really truly felt like I was just in shock for, like, a while. And my friend, who was my birth photographer, she did not make it in time, like, before he was born. She walked through the door, I don't know what time she walked through the door. She walked through the door after he was born, probably, like, 5 minutes maybe after he was born. Um, and she still took photos of us and everything, but yeah, she missed the actual birth, which was my fault because I didn't call her the first time. But yeah, but she also, still got some, like, really amazing pictures of us that I love, and she helped me, like, kind of, get out of that, like, just sitting there in shock.
Right.
And she was, like, talking to me, and she helped me, like, stand up and get things situated, like, waited for the placenta, checked out the placenta with me, and then, like, we cut his cord, my husband cut his cord, and we weighed him and measured him and all of that stuff. Um, but yeah, it was just really crazy. I would always hear stories of like people having precipitous like labors and stuff, and their labor only being like a couple hours or whatever, and I always thought it was like insane.
Yeah.
And I never considered that that would happen, during one of my births.
And I had my third was that a lot like your birth, and it was more like after you had them, your brain is still like, wait a minute, I already went to labor. Hold
Yeah.
on. Yeah, you don't even have time to really process labor, and then the waves went from what like doable to like so intense so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a lot. It was very intense.
I mean, that's awesome. That I really like. Um, I forgot, you might have told me about you had a free birth, or I forgot, but
Uh-huh.
I think it's great because it really, you kind of educate people a little bit where you come
Mhm.
from. I think a lot of people assume that when you say, "Oh, I had a free birth," they're like, "Oh, you're completely against medical." No, it's not the
Mhm.
situation. A lot of women, they don't have an option because they don't have a midwife, because there's none, that can get to them. And then they're
Yeah.
like, well, then the only option is a hospital with an OB, and that might not be something that somebody wishes, whether it be from trauma they had before, or from something that they've educated themselves on and they feel like is best for them and their baby. And so,
Right.
um, when it comes down to it, you made the decision that, worked best for you and your family, and very eventful. I don't think it wouldn't have went any different if you were, had a midwife or not. The baby would have flew right out regardless. And
Yeah.
he was ready to meet you, I guess. He was just,
Yeah, yeah, and it's actually funny that you brought that up because before I decided to have a free birth, I was never like against free birth, but I also
"Mm,
was never like, yeah, I'm totally going to do that.
yeah,
I was always more comfortable having a midwife, and um I was never comfortable in the hospital.
right,
But I was always more comfortable having a midwife, and I always liked, having their experience and their
right."
support and, everything during my pregnancy and labor. But when it came down to it, it was like having a midwife who doesn't trust me and my body. Like, that's how she basically made me feel when I went to my appointments,
Yeah.
or birthing by myself where I do trust myself and my body. And and like educating myself obviously on what to do if I do need medical attention as well.
And I know during labor you were probably very fixated on making sure that the things that you knew to look for didn't happen. And then the baby
Right.
just came so fast, you were like, hold on, that wasn't one I was actually looking for.
Right. Like, yeah, and that's the thing with like when I felt the cord, my brain immediately was like, "Oh my gosh, why am I feeling the cord right now? Like,
Hmm.
is it, cord prolapse?" But then I kind of had to stop and be like, "Well, actually the baby is pretty much all the way out at this point anyway." So
And I
it's
know it would have helped if your friend would have been able to make it in time. Having that
yeah.
like birth support there, somebody who's like educated and knows, what to look for, because sometimes, during birth, mom goes into instinctual,
Mhm.
you're having your contractions, you're focused on baby, and so when you have that other person there that's like, um, watching for the things that you already knew to watch for, but sometimes you
Yeah.
forget once baby comes, especially as fast as your baby came. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Those are always very exciting. They and mine still, like, even the next day, I was like, guys, can you believe how fast that happened?
Yeah, I think I talked about that for quite a while after he was born.
Yeah. And when you think about it, like after I had mine, I was like, man, I could do that again. That was easy. If I go in knowing I'm only going to be in labor an hour, I'm cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
jokes on me, I go into labor for, like, 12 hours the next time. Jokes on me.
Yeah, it's crazy how literally every single birth is so different.
Right. And none of your other births were like that, were they?
No, none of my other births. I mean, my shortest before that was 4 hours, which I thought that was really fast.
Yeah.
Um, and so, okay, so my first child was 6 hours, and then my second was 4, and then my third was 6 again, and
Okay.
then this one was like 90 minutes or something.
So when you were, like, pregnant, you were thinking, there's an average. We just
Yeah,
take an average number and think, "Okay, we might be in labor 4 to 6 hours, and that's okay. We've done it
right.
before."
Yeah, I was like, I could like I would have been perfectly fine being in labor for 6 hours again.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a decent amount of time to be in labor. Like, but yeah, so I was prepared for that, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, I was not prepared to have a baby in like an hour.
If we could all do that, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I know
Oh.
some of our moms who've been, like, 24-hour labor, they're like, "Wow."
Yeah. Yeah, I also though cannot imagine like the other side, like
Yeah.
being in labor for I don't know, I have friends who are like, "Yeah, I was in labor for like 36 hours." And I'm like, "What?"
One of my last clients, she was just in labor for, I would say, over 24 hours. And we were, just on our side, like dad and everybody, we were tired just from,
Yeah.
have the support and stuff. But I can't imagine how on the mom end, having the contraction and not progressing. And then that's hard mentally,
Yeah.
really. And so, but then on the other end, you've got it's hard because you didn't know you were going to have a baby this quickly. So there's, birth is just so different, and it's
Yeah.
exciting. That's why I do this, because I just think, it's so cool that somebody's story is not going to align with yours, but it's going to help somebody else. And it's so awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad I was able to share and
Me too. I love to hear it. It was exciting. It was like, one of those, like, and plus free birth. Nobody talks about it. So I think it should be talked about.
yeah. Yeah, I think also free birth is still such a like taboo or, it's like very frowned upon.
Right.
So I do think that when people talk about it, the people who are frowning upon it kind of get to hear that and maybe like hopefully understand a little bit more and
Yeah,
like
and
see it
yeah.
from a new perspective.
Yeah, because we don't have to agree with everyone that we
Right.
always meet, but we can support, someone in their decision, because at the end of the day, it's their body, it's their baby, and they want to make the best decision as well.
Right, exactly.
So just supporting mom throughout all of that is very important. And I like that. Thank you for jumping on with me tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I will edit it, and as soon as I get done,
Yeah.
I'll post it and let you know.
Yay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm glad to talk to you. I'll be in touch with you again
Yes.
soon.
Okay.
We'll have coffee or something one day.
Yeah, let's do that.
Sounds good. Well, have a good night,
All
okay?
right. You too.
All right, bye.
Bye.